Okay, we're ready to see some slides, and you're going to be hearing from Willard Martin, who took these slides years ago, and telling us all about them. Go ahead, Willard, when you're ready.
Well, these are a series of slides that were taken on Guam back in about 1957. I don't know how plain it is. It's the room isn't that dark, but you can see the muzzle of a Japanese coast artillery piece just to the right of my wife. There was a long tunnel that went back into the jungle to where this coast artillery piece was located. And the tunnel was made out of a combination of coconut logs and cement. This particular coast artillery emplacement wasn't found until after the island was recaptured from the Japanese in 1944. But it had a direct line of sight over the invasion beach where the American forces landed on Guam. This next one should give you an idea of the tunnel. At the top you can see just traces of light coming through, but the tunnel was about 8 feet high, and it was, like I say, it was a combination of cement and coconut logs.
It's not as dark in here as we would like it, so you may have trouble seeing some of these, but these are inside. We'll be seeing a little clearer later on here. There we go.
This was a memorial to the headquarters of 20th Air Force that was the lead Air Force on the bombing of Japan, latter part of World War II. And it lists all of the major cities in Japan that were bombed by the B-29s flying out of Saipan and Tinian. This area was the invasion area when the United States forces came back into Guam. They came in to the left of that reef, the coral reef out there. The white line out from shore is a coral reef. On to the left of the coral reef there was a break. They came in and they landed the bulk of their forces there. And in the foreground here was part of what's left of a Japanese gun emplacement. It looked right over the beach. This is another picture of the invasion area. You can see the break in the reef just about in the center of the picture. And they funneled all of their landing craft into that break in the reef. Another picture of it from the hill overlooking the landing area. Down on the lower right is what they called Saipan Point. Was an area where they built up a lot of supplies and so forth for the push into the interior of the island. This is up on what they call Nimitz Hill. Admiral Nimitz, who was Commander-in-Chief of the Pacific, had his headquarters in Hawaii for several years at the beginning of the war. And then after Guam was recaptured, he moved his headquarters to Guam, and they named the hill. This hill, the highest point on the island, was named after him.
During the war, Guam was used as a base where they brought some of the injured quite a bit, wasn't there also?
Yeah, after 1944.
After 44.
Japanese captured it in 1941, and they held it until 1944. This is another picture along the shoreline. It's more of to show you a little bit of what the terrain was actually like. They had to come up these mountains or hills, and the Japanese emplacements and their fortifications were pretty well situated all throughout these these hilly areas here. Taken from a KC-97 air refueling tanker, one similar to what they had at Plattsburgh when they first opened the base. The island directly under the wing is called the island of Rota. It's just north of the island of Guam. Another picture is we were flying up to the Saipan Tinian area for an air refueling mission. All of these pictures are taken at approximately 30,000 feet.
These islands are quite small too, aren't they?
Very, yeah.
Very tiny islands.
That's another picture of Rota. And this is a small island of Agadar. It's out there in the middle. I don't know if there was anybody who actually lived on that island. It's rather small. This is the island of Tinian. You can see remnants of the runways in the upper right-hand side of the picture.
This is the island that they mentioned that I guess the plane took off for the Enola Gay, right? It took off from Tinian, and probably that airfield right there.
Yeah. This is also Tinian. The shoreline, if you were down close to the shoreline, you would have that little white strip would probably be about 20 feet, 30 feet wide, sandy beach. There's another shot of the north tip of Tinian Island. As Jack LaFave mentioned earlier, there was only 2 miles off from Saipan. And this was the point that was closest to Saipan. I think I have a picture that shows the proximity of the 2 islands. Again, this is Tinian. This is the northern part of Saipan Island. And for anybody, I guess, that had been there in World War II, they would probably see quite a few changes just in the road structure that has been built up in the northern part of the island. This was the capital city of Saipan. You can see some of the houses down in the lower right-hand side of the picture, and up towards the center, the town of Garapan. And back over Tinian again. This was an RB-47. It was coming in for an air refueling hookup. The dark image right in the center is the boom operator, and he's flying the boom. You can see it coming down into the opening where the doors have opened in front of the cockpit on the RB-47.
Interesting picture.
What he does, and he made the hookup there. What they do is they fly the boom and make the hookup, and then they transfer the fuel. He dropped off after being refueled, and then he had another pilot along with him that needed practice on aerial hookups. So they ran about 9 hookups while we were on this particular mission. After they finished their hookups and their transfer of fuel, the RB pulled up alongside, and I got this shot out of the side window.
Nice picture.
I've been asked for that particular slide, but I didn't want to give it up.
That's a nice shot.
Then he peeled off and he left, and you can see how high we were above him. We were flying, like I say, around 30,000 feet.
How long does it take to transfer?
Transfer the fuel? Not very long. It was just a matter of minutes.
Minutes, huh?
We were coming back into Anderson Air Force Base on Guam for a landing.
Now you were what on this plane?
I just flew along as
just flying along on this?
Yeah.
Oh.
This is down at Apra Harbor, the main harbor on the island of Guam. This is the cruiser, the USS Rochester, named after Rochester, New York. And Guam still remains one of the, probably the only, today the only large naval base that the United States has in the Western Pacific, particularly since they closed Subic Bay in the Philippines. Another picture of the ship. I can't hardly make out the name of the ship. It's USS Rochester.
Uh-huh. It's a cruiser, you said?
Yeah, there was a cruiser. The USS
Cruisers are
Rochester.
named after cities,
Cities, right.
and states, their battleships are named
Right.
after the states.
This is went by ship to the Philippines, and this was taken as we were entering the San Bernardino Straits, where one of the large battles took place during World War II. Gives you an idea what the little bit about the ship and the islands.
Oh, that's a good shot, yep.
Let's see.
Well, here we see water and the mountain in the background. Willard, tell us about this.
This is also going through the San Bernardino Straits. This is where the United States met 3 Japanese fleets shortly after they landed on the island of Leyte, and the Japanese were going to try to wipe out the American naval presence in the Pacific at that time. And they had 3 separate fleets. The largest fleet came up from the south through the San Bernardino Straits, consisting of their largest battleship and cruisers and what have you, and they suffered one of the major defeats in World War II between surface ships. Give you an idea on the going through the straits, there's what they call an inter-island coastal steamer.
Looks peaceful today, doesn't it?
Oh yes.
Lifeboat on the side of the ship.
Make sure they had those. They were making a turn. They were getting close to Manila. This was on the top deck where they showed movies in the evening. This was a troop ship. In fact, one of my cousins was looking at these slides and he says, "That's a ship I went to Korea on." He recognized the ship.
What kind of a ship is this now?
This was the USNS Man, M-A-N-N. It was
Yes.
It was a troop ship. These are all pictures coming up along the shore or the coastline of Luzon. This is in Manila Harbor itself, and as you can see, a lot of debris in the water. It's very dirty. They really have pollution problems there, but it's an extremely large harbor. Japanese ship, which I found rather interesting at the time because it hadn't been that long since the Japanese had lost World War II, and they already had their ships into Manila. These are some pictures downtown Manila. At about the same time that the battle for Iwo Jima was going on, General MacArthur's troops had landed in Luzon and had approached Manila from the north and the south, and the recapture of Manila took approximately 6 weeks. There was considerable damage done, and the estimates that during this particular time frame, the Japanese killed in excess of 100,000 Filipino civilians.
Wow.
Just outright murdered them for no reason whatsoever. This was the Catholic church downtown in Manila. They also had an extremely large cathedral. This is one of the Central Park in the city of Manila, and you can see it's backwards up on the signboard over to the left of that statue, the Manila Chronicle, their major newspaper. This is the tomb of the unknown soldier in Manila. And shortly after we were there, President Eisenhower made a visit to Manila and laid a wreath at this particular tomb. This is a site where there was, they said, roughly 600 Filipinos were murdered by the Japanese. The wall in the background is actually, it's like a dungeon, and it borders the Pasig River, which divides the city of Manila. And what they did, the Japanese had put all these people in these dungeons, and then they would open the valves and flood the dungeons and drown all these people. So this was in February 1945, and that's the same time that the battle was going on for the island of Iwo Jima. This is the Pasig River, and this is that stone dungeon I was telling you about along the side, on this side, to the left. And it went considerably below the water line, and they would put these people down in there. I guess it went back to the time of the Spanish occupation when Spain owned the Philippines. They used that for incarcerating prisoners and probably trying to get them to talk by flooding their dungeon cells with river water. This is what they call a jeepney. Filipinos are very industrious people. They take an old government jeep that was left over from World War II, and they soup it up, and it doesn't look like a jeep anymore. They turn it really into a classic-looking vehicle.
A sports vehicle there.
Right.
Yeah.
And in the background is the Rizal Shrine. This Rizal was a hero in the Philippines. And anybody that has been to the Philippines has probably heard about this Mr. Rizal, who was more or less a martyr to the Philippine independence. This is downtown Manila. What they call, on the right-hand side, that wall is part of what they call the walled city, the interior city of the original city of Manila. And then there's a hotel on the other side. This is the White House, the home of the President of the Philippines. This building here is what they called Santo Tomas University. What was left of it, it was left in the same condition as it was at the end of the war. And the Japanese incarcerated several thousand American, British, Australian, and so forth civilians in this particular university from 1941 until they were freed in 1944. This says the Land Registration Commission, but it was actually the main entrance to what they call Bilibid Prison. And when the Americans recaptured Manila, there was something like 700 American POWs that were being held in this Bilibid prison that were rescued. And since the war, the government of the Philippines turned it into a Land Registration Commission to get away from the bad reputation that the building had from the wartime.
You'd like to have that car today, wouldn't you, right there?
Yeah. This is a picture going over the Pasig River. This is downtown Manila. From the vehicle, you can get a pretty good idea of the time frame of the pictures. They were in the late 50s. It's another picture of a section of the walled city in downtown Manila. This is the oldest Catholic cathedral in the city of Manila. I believe they called it St. Augustine's Cathedral, and it goes back into the 1800s. This was a hotel along the shoreline of Manila Bay. Evidently, at one time, it was a place where a lot of people went. Was supposedly one of their plusher places to stay. At a Manila hotel. These are pictures of Manila Harbor. And this one is taken later on in the evening. That is the island of Corregidor. There are promontories on each end on both the north and south ends of the island of Corregidor. Didn't have an opportunity to go there, but we did go by there.
We'll take a short break. You're looking at some slides brought to us here by Willard Martin. We'll hear Willard's voice in the background explaining these slides that were taken in the late 50s, you said, about 57, 58?
Right. Yes.
Okay, Willard, go ahead.
All right, this is another slide of Corregidor. We got a little closer to it. This is the Peninsula Bataan. And for any World War II buffs or anybody that was in the Philippines, that was where the United States had their first major surrender, was of the forces on Bataan, and then subsequently the remaining forces on the island of Corregidor. This is another shot of the tip of Bataan Peninsula. This is more of the peninsula. Back to Corregidor. This is the city of Olongapo, also referred to as Subic Bay. There's a large U.S. Navy installation. And this is the main street in the city. One of their shopping areas. Coca-Cola was well liked over there as well. This is near the harbor, an area near the harbor of Subic Bay. You see they're right on the edge of the jungle. It's like the city is just carved right out of the jungle. Here's where they were doing some construction on a portion of the naval base there at Subic. Some more of the construction. This is another shot of the downtown area. There was only one major street and probably 2 or 3 side streets, and this was one of the side streets to give you an idea where the jungle was, and the river that came down into the harbor. People washed their clothes and what have you right here in the river.
Texaco.
Caltex gas station, yeah.
The water in the streets, huh?
Oh yeah.
It's all dirt.
This was the main section of town. This was the town square. That was the park in the center.
Uh-huh.
And this was one of their means of transportation. They called them, what is it? Calesa, C-A-L-E-S-A, a horse-drawn cart. You'd see them lined up for, like taxi cabs lined up for a block.
So people rode in those, huh?
Yeah, right. So here they are here, they're lined up.
Uh-huh.
Almost like like a taxi cab stand. This is another one of the side streets. Most of the side streets weren't paved. It was just the main street. This was their farmers market, where the people came in from the outlying districts, brought in their fruit and their vegetables and what have you, in one big farmers market. Another picture of the downtown, probably one of the most modern looking of the buildings in the whole city.
Now, you were visiting here, were you, Willard?
We went over on a trip, yeah.
Okay.
This was a funeral.
Mostly walking, huh?
Uh-huh.
People are walking.
Yeah. And the body is in the car.
Uh-huh.
This was at the entrance to the naval base. They were selling the newspapers, and the headline was something to do with President Eisenhower's forthcoming visit to the Philippines. It's part of Subic Bay. You can see the ships in the background. The bay was huge. One of the signs that was put up, or they were putting up to show American friendship with the Filipinos in preparation for President Eisenhower's visit. It's more of just an area of the naval base. Give you an idea, there wasn't a heck of a lot there. There's a ball field. This is back out in the San Bernardino Strait. We're on a return back to Guam by ship. And this is the island of Guam. And what was interesting about this particular one, we made the trip back. I think it was 48 hours quicker than we were scheduled, because a person had been murdered on board the ship.
On the ship?
And they anchored about 2 miles offshore, and they brought out investigators and interrogated people in the crew and everything.
Is the water as blue as it looks?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
That was sunrise.
Sunrise.
Sunrise, yeah. This is give you a little idea of the coastline of Guam, the cliffs. And this is the harbor at Apra, Guam.
Now, a lot of these islands, I don't know if you know, were formed from volcanoes. Is that the idea, huh?
Right.
Out of the bottom of the ocean, I understand.
Right.
And as they spread, the islands developed over the years.
That was one of the problems with Iwo Jima. It was they called it the Ash Islands, was their literal translation of the Japanese name for them, because they had that sand, whatever you wanted to call it, their volcanic ash, and they had the odor of sulfur was very, very strong from the. This is in Naganya, Guam. This is the cathedral. The cathedral that they had was destroyed by the Japanese during the war, and after the war, they had started constructing it, and they had just started holding mass in the cathedral, although it wasn't finished yet. They were still holding masses in there. Some pictures of the central areas of the island give you an idea of what the terrain was like.
We'll take a short break right here. It'll be right back. We're looking at slides and Willard Martin telling us all about them. A lot of dirt there, Willard. What is this we're looking at now?
This is the top of one of the hills on above Saipan Point where the invasion was.
Uh-huh.
And this was a Japanese gun emplacement, a fortification, whatever. This was taken from the shore side of it, just to give you an idea. That all that is coral, and mixed with, there's some cement mixed in with it. But I took some other pictures. This is from the side away from the shore. They had this cement ramp that went up where they could wheel their guns up on top of this fortification.
Uh-huh.
Then they had their, if you see to the left of the ramp, where they could go inside the fortification for protection during bombardment, whatever. And this one here took quite a bit of damage, so they probably spotted it and knocked it out right away. This is one of the corner pieces of it. And I tried to get the Japanese caricatures that they put in the cement, hoping that sometime maybe somebody would translate it for me. Down behind, you can see parts of the city of Agana, down on the other side of the hill. This is a picture of Agana, the capital city. There aren't too many houses when these were taken because the city was completely demolished. The point of land that sticks out towards the reef was constructed after the war from Japanese war material that had been accumulated. They just pushed it kept pushing it into the ocean and covered it up with dirt and made it a point of land out there. They got a park out there where every year they celebrate the liberation of Guam. This was one of the houses that survived the war, whatever. This is a Japanese blockhouse along the shoreline, what was left of it. This is looking out through the porthole of one of the emplacements, fortifications on the shoreline.
So these slides are 36 years old.
Yeah, at least.
37, 38. Huh?
Yeah. This was, back in those days, when you went overseas, you went by ship. And when a ship came into port, there was a big, big occasion. They had bands, and they had people were turned out. They had it was really a big celebration. This is on the northern end of the island near the Air Force Base. Going down through the cliffs, the Americans cut out this road. They call this place Taraji Point. It's a U.S. destroyer that had being towed into port on Guam. Something happened to it out at sea, and they were towing it into the harbor. This is taken from a fishing boat off the coast of Guam. A lot of fish out there, bluefin, what have you. This is a particular interesting one. I took this one the day we were out. At the top of that cliff is a large dump truck. You just barely see it. On the very top of that cliff.
Over to the right, yeah.
Over to the right, yeah. That little thing that sticks up. It's a big dump truck. What they did was they would dump garbage off the cliff there. And if you came through here, I had some pictures taken off the point of the cliff, and you look down into the water, and you'd see nothing but schools of sharks in there because they came there for the garbage. It was a collecting point for them. We were going through there with this fishing boat, and we weren't wasting any time.
How long were you on Guam?
4 years.
Oh, wow. These were accumulation over a period of time.
Oh, yeah. But show you how rough the coastline is of Guam. There was only certain areas where they could land to...
Certainly.
yeah. This was at the home of a native. They had what they called fiestas, which is similar to Spanish culture. And what they do is they barbecue, roast a pig, and it's open to anybody that wants to come stop by and have something to eat. And it's just one big time.
Oh, that's pretty, yeah.
This was the Air Force beach on Anderson Air Force Base. They call it Taraji Beach.
So it was part of the Air Force Base itself?
Yeah, that's right. It's on the interesting part about this thing was that, and I don't have, you see caves in there.
Yes.
In the side walls there. But the cliffs go up quite high. And the Air Force dumped their garbage. They had a garbage dump there in that area from, I guess, 1944 right on through. And in 1960, just before we left Guam, they captured 2 Japanese members of the Japanese Armed Forces. They had stayed there for 16 years and avoided capture. They were hiding out in caves like this, and they were asked, did you know that the war was over? And they, well, we got the pictures, you know, from the garbage. They look at the magazines and the pictures, and they had a pretty good idea that the war was over, but
didn't know for sure.
They didn't want to surrender.
No, they don't surrender, yeah.
This was what the government housing looked like on the base. It was typhoon-proof. Guam was in the corridor for typhoons, and they can be particularly devastating.
Now, this wasn't a house?
That's a house.
You don't have to worry about the flat roof and the snow.
No.
Now, are those doors or windows?
Those are windows. They call them louvers. All they had was a screen on the inside.
I see.
And you open those up and get your fresh air in. And
that isn't too big, is it? Is it deceiving?
It's a 2-bedroom house.
It is a 2-bedroom. That's what you lived in, one of those?
That was mine.
That was yours, okay. Yeah. And you were how long there? 3, 4 years?
4 years.
4 years in that?
Well, in that one particular one, probably about 2, and then we moved over to another housing area.
Get pretty hot in Guam? Was it pretty hot?
It was in the 80s. It was comfortable. One of the big problems there was you were so isolated. They would fly fresh vegetables and eggs, and milk in from Japan. Once a week, they'd send a plane to Japan to bring back, produce and meat and stuff, because it wasn't available on the island. So everybody'd wait. Boy, when the planes come in, you knew when the planes went and when they were coming back, or hopefully when they were coming back. It's what's left of a Japanese ship that was either torpedoed or bombed during the war.
Pretty close to shore, huh?
Yeah, they beached it on the...
Yeah. And they're leaving that right there, I bet.
Oh, yeah. The Japanese field piece along the coastline. This emplacements on the beach. These are taken on the island of Wake Island.
That's pretty tough to, unless you can get something to open that open there. Pretty well protected there, aren't they?
This was a picture of the main area on Anderson Air Force Base on Guam. They had these trees that were, they call them flame trees, but they just get these brilliant red flowers on them. They were really something to see. One of the landing craft from the war.
They have a lot of that. Well, of course, that was only 12, 13 years after. Probably gone now.
Yeah.
It deteriorated.
There's
Those
a
bomb
couple-
craters?
Bomb craters, yeah.
Wow, look at
Pretty
that.
good sized holes.
I guess they are.
Well, that's a ship. It's a ship coming in. Probably one of the ships that was coming in.
Uh-huh. That's not a military ship.
Yep.
It is.
Navy,
Oh, yeah.
Navy troop ship.
Again, we're looking at pictures with Willard Martin, pictures he took when he was in Guam. Of course, Guam was one of the places they brought the military when they were wounded in the other islands after 1944.
This was down along the north coastline of Guam. There was one picture I wanted to show you that's in here, but
We'll take a short break while we're looking for that picture.
right there.
Oh, there it is. We got it. We won't take the break.
That's the Bathyscaphe Trieste. What was the fellow's name? Jacques Cousteau?
Cousteau? Oh, yeah.
That's when he made the deepest dive that's ever been made. He made it in the Marianas Trench. He brought the Bathyscaphe there, and they went down.
Huh.
I don't know how many miles it was, but he set a record.
I mean, 7 miles.
Yeah.
Down. I think it's 7 miles straight down. The pressure down there. That's enclosed in a fence here, I think, huh? Yeah, there's a fence. There's a fence around there, so you
Yeah.
can't get too
Oh,
close.
Yeah, they wouldn't let anybody near it.
Uh-huh. Pictures were taken somewhere in the 57, 58 period
Yeah.
when Willard was in the Air Force in Guam. What were you doing as a part of the Air Force while you were there, Willard?
Well, I was a first sergeant for a while,
Uh-huh.
and then I was a communications superintendent. I ran the communications center there. And, we were it was a major SAC installation, Strategic Air Command installation, and they had one of their large communications relay points there.
We're setting up for the next series of slides.
Yeah, this is going up to Japan, and this is one of the Bonin Islands, of which Saipan is a member. Not Saipan, Iwo Jima. And this was a small island near Iwo Jima. To give you an idea how small some of these islands are. There's Iwo Jima.
Okay, now we're looking at this Iwo Jima here in the reversed angle. As we saw the pictures this afternoon earlier, the Suribachi's up on that right side, way up. Is that correct?
Yeah, the Suribachi's actually on the southwest corner.
Okay,
down
and
here.
so we're coming in from the other end of the island as we saw the pictures today. So they landed on the far side of that upper part when they landed the 4th and 5th Division of the Marines, when they landed on Iwo Jima.
Yeah.
Did you land on Iwo Jima at all?
No.
Did you ever? You never did, huh?
We thought we were going to land there one time. This is as we went by the island.
Uh-huh.
You look back at another one. We got about halfway to Japan from Iwo Jima, and we lost an engine. And the pilot says, well, it's a case of either turning back to Iwo Jima or going on to Japan. It's 50-50. So everybody would rather go to Japan because Iwo Jima didn't have anything there.
Yes.
So we went on into Japan.
Now, was that a cloud over the island there? Or was
Yeah.
there's clouds over the island, yeah.
This is downtown Tokyo. This is a night shot. They were trying to get, so it was time exposure. Rickshaw.
Uh-huh.
It was very interesting. This is Shiba Park in downtown Tokyo. And this is another part of the park. They have these huge goldfish in here. They feed them a loaf of bread at a time, I think.
Did you see any remnants of the bombing from the war when you were there?
In
Pretty well,
Japan?
yeah,
No.
pretty well all picked up.
it was pretty well
by
picked.
then. Yeah.
That building down there was a Japanese diet building, that one that sticks way up.
Uh-huh.
And MacArthur's building
Well,
headquarters is right near it.
tell us what a diet building is.
That was
we
a
don't
parlor.
think it's a place to go for, not to eat.
Japanese diet is the equivalent of the United States Congress, the
Okay.
parliamentary building.
You can see it there.
This body of water in the foreground is the moat around the Imperial Palace where Emperor Hirohito was living. This is one of the entrances to the Imperial Palace, but you didn't get through there. It might look like you were going to. There is General MacArthur's headquarters.
Straight
that
ahead?
building.
The big building there? Yeah.
Yeah. If you can, it's rather difficult to see, but the next street down, it's nothing but a huge traffic jam. And that was because on this particular day, President Sukarno from Indonesia was making an official state visit to the Emperor of Japan. They had all your streets are blocked off, and traffic came to a standstill. So, but you can get an idea. There's a moat around the palace, and you can see the stone wall. And my understanding was they never touched the Imperial Palace in all the bombing they did at Tokyo. Not one bomb landed on the Imperial Palace.
It had to be deliberate not to,
Yeah,
right?
right.
Which, where you'd think that a war they would try to cause as much havoc as possible, they didn't.
Right.
But this past week was also the 50th anniversary of the firebombing Dresden in
Germany.
Europe. That was a devastating. They said over 40,000 people
Right.
were killed in that raid by the British and the Americans, trying to put a little bit of punishment to Dresden because of the raids on London over the years. And they just they were in Germany.
Yeah, they had a regular, what they call a firestorm.
Yep.
Now, this was the main, I guess you call it, entryway to the Imperial Palace. My understanding was that one building you see right about in the center was the business offices for the emperor, just inside the wall, and then this area was kept wide open. It was like one huge parking lot, but nobody parked there. But
That's a lot of open land in Japan because they don't have a lot of open land. Land's very, very valuable.
I think that about does it, Bob.
It's about
as
does
far
the
as-
pictures. Well, Willard, we thank you very much for showing us the pictures. Take a little travel log here with Willard Martin, retired now from the Air Force and later from the Post Office Department. How long with the Post Office Department?
24 years.
24.
Yeah.
God, you had two lifetimes there.
Yeah.
God, well, you must be older than what I. You can't be that old. You got 24 plus 21
Yeah.
working.
Right. Yeah.
And he graduated, of course, back in, we're going to print to figure his age. He graduated in 1947, probably in, you've got to figure at 47. He's probably born around 1930.
Yeah.
30, 31. And,
Your sister was the youngest in the class. I was the next to the youngest.
yes, my sister was, when she graduated in June, had been turned 16 in May.
Right.
And couldn't get a job outside at that time. I was too young and did not go on to school. But we appreciate your taking the time again and giving us your expertise and some of your comments during our meeting. We've been talking today here at the Knights of Columbus with 4 people. We heard from Tom Batha telling us the little background on the war in the Pacific and how we built our Navy, our Marine Corps, and as we tried to take some of the islands back on the march to Japan. Then we also talked with 2 of the veterans of the Pacific War, particularly Iwo Jima, Jack Lefebvre and Leon LaFountain. Jack having also been in the Battle of Tinian and Saipan. We saw them here today on the slide, some of the pictures of the island of Tinian. Again, very small islands, relatively, huh?
Very small.
And very flat out there, and very tough battles on there. And both were injured, wounded in the Battle of Iwo Jima, which today, the 19th, is the 50th anniversary of the landing in Iwo Jima at 9 a.m. And before 9 hours had passed, Jack Lefebvre was taken off the island with shrapnel mortar shell fragments to his back and went into the hospital ship and then into Hawaii, I guess, for recovery, and then back to the States. And Leon was wounded about a day or two later with shrapnel from a grenade, and then he recovered, and for in 10 days, I guess he said, he was back there working with the Quartermaster Corps, bringing things to the island, but did no more fighting, and then that was his last battle. And we hope you enjoyed this little tour of the pictures of the island of Guam, mostly, although we saw other islands from overhead, and we also saw a few shots in Japan. We are indebted to you also, Willard, again, and when you get a chance to stop in at the VFW next to the St. John's Road there as you head toward Moores from Champlain. Willard is there often. He's an officer at the VFW. And tell us that officer again. You're
Quartermaster.
The quartermaster, right?
Yeah, right.
And if you like these kind of stories, because this is the 50th year, and we'll be talking with the VE Day in May, and we'll be doing something in August for VJ Day, 50 years. And if you'd like to participate, we don't want to leave anybody out, please communicate with either Calvin or I. In the meantime, we thank you for watching Hometown Cable, and we appreciate your comments. We appreciate your patronage. $12 or more once a year to Calvin Castine, Hometown Cable, 1477 Ridge Road. Show him that you care and that you want to participate and bring in more of these things to you in your living room so you can see what's happening to the North Country. And once in a while on an offside history like this, 50 years. Thanks much for watching. Good night, everybody. See you next Sunday.